December is for kids, a time of joy, community, and learning. But right now, teachers across the country lack the essential resources for their students to explore their curiosity and excitement. At DonorsChoose.org, you can be there for them. One gift brings the supplies and support students need for a joyful, successful year. Find a classroom near you that matters to you. This giving season, make a generous donation at DonorsChoose.org/local. Donors Choose. Support a classroom, build a future.
There's saving for retirement, and then there's living in it. At Fidelity, we can help you make that transition and plan for whatever comes next. With a free personalized income plan, you can view and manage your cash flow across accounts. Plus, you'll get investing insights to help you make your savings last. Ready to take on retirement? Get started at fidelity.com/income planning. Expenses charged by your investments and other costs and fees associated with trading or transacting in your account apply. Fidelity Brokerage Services member NYSE SIPC.
She said, get out the chat room and clean my stretch. Feeling fine, so fresh.
The Glad Girl Group coming at you with a throwback jam. That was Glad Force Flex Drawstring Trash Bags featuring Pine Sol Original Scent. And that's better than all good. It's all Glad.
The most innovative companies are going further with T-Mobile for Business, like Delta Airlines. Together with T-Mobile for Business, Delta Airlines is putting 5G into the hands of ground staff so they can better assist on-the-go travelers with real-time information. From the Delta Sky Club to the Jet Bridge, this is elevating customer experience. And Tractor Supply trusts 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to connect over 2,200 stores around the country with 5G business internet. Plus, T-Mobile is powering AI solutions so Tractor Supply team members can match shoppers with the products they need faster. This is enriching customer experience. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But D.C. politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
Welcome to our paranormal afterlife. This is our paranormal afterlife, and I'm your host, Simon Bown. This week I'm talking to Susan Grau about her book, Infinite Life, Infinite Lessons, Wisdom from the Spirit World on Living, Dying, and the In-Between. Susan is an internationally recognised intuitive and evidential medium. She's an international speaker and grief coach, and she had a childhood near-death experience. She's been featured in numerous magazines, podcasts, and documentaries, including Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, Elle magazine, and The Hollywood Reporter. And you can enjoy the extended version of this episode ad-free, along with over 100 hours of extended episodes on Patreon. Hi Susan, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Simon. I'm happy to be here.
So we're going to talk about your book. It's called Infinite Life, Infinite Lessons, Wisdom from the Spirit World on Living, Dying, and the In-Between. But one of the things that stood out to me at the beginning was you said, I had more imaginary friends than you could count. So was that when you were really young, before your near-death experience?
Yes, both. So prior to my near-death experience, I remember most things that were my imaginary friends were animals and a child that used to play with me with the animals. And I loved animals, and I would see them float when they would transition. So we had land, and I had the opportunity to see animals transition, and I would just watch them float. And it was just normal. I didn't think anything. I didn't even double take it. It just was. But I had, after my NDE, I had a tremendous amount of friends. Some were young, some were old, some played with me, some didn't. Some reprimanded me, like in a gentle way, don't climb into that hole, that will be dangerous kind of thing. So yes, they were everywhere.
And you say you regularly saw angels at the end of your bed.
I did. I saw what started out with, when I came back from my near-death experience, I saw people. But even prior to that, I remember being very tiny, maybe 3.5. And there's very few things I remember about that time in my life, but I do remember it, the spiritual things. And I would see these beautiful light emanating beings. I don't know how else to say it. And, people ask me, did they have wings? And I can't tell them because, the light off of the angelic bodies shine between 3 and 4 feet or more off of them. Just like our heart space shines, the energy of our heart goes outside of our bodies scientifically. They have the same thing, but it's light. I would imagine love's combined in that. But yes, I would see them.
Did they ever communicate with you?
Not when I was that little, but when I came back from my NDE, 100%. They were talking to me. I could feel them, see them, sense them, hear them, know them. It was really overwhelming. And I actually would cover my head and tell them to go away because I was afraid. I thought they were the boogeyman because they were so real to me. And when I didn't see them, I knew they were there. But I say that I could see eyes looking in my windows or eyes under the bed, but I don't know if they were actually eyes. They probably were just lights coming out of them.
And did you ever find out why they were visiting you at that time?
No, I didn't understand it. I just knew that, are we talking prior to crossing or after?
Yeah, prior to.
Oh, prior to. No, I didn't see, and I only saw animals before then, and I would see angels. So every once in a while, I would feel like something was in the corner of my room, and I don't know why they were there, but I have a feeling it's because I was going to have the experience.
Do you feel that perhaps there's something about you, it was like you were a beacon and that they could spot you from miles away, so to speak, and that they don't spot many children like that?
With no ego involved, I do. I was a very kind child who I was lonely. I was different. And I was very joyful and very loving. I had a tremendous amount of empathy and love. And I was born that way. My mother used to tell me I was the one born that way. And I just had a connection to something bigger, and I knew it. I don't know how to explain it. I was all forgiving and very sensitive and tender.
And your whole family have this kind of talent of mediumship. Your mum told you, didn't she, that you shouldn't tell people about these things that you're seeing?
She absolutely did. But my mother got very frightened by the experiences she was having, which were not scary experiences, as she told me later, but she was very frightened. And she called my father. She was in the corner, cowering basically because she was seeing so many spirits. And they locked my mother up. They thought that she had had a nervous breakdown. This was right after she had my sister, and the hormones change in our bodies after we have children. And sometimes the ability to connect increases from what I've experienced. And because we just change, we're more connected to the spirit world after we have a child because they come right from there. And so my mother was put away and she was put on medications. And unfortunately, they gave Valium at the time, and they almost didn't let her out. They told my father she was in psychosis, seeing things. So she was very afraid, very afraid. And so she would say, don't talk about it. Do not talk about it. You don't see them. They're not there. There's nothing here. That's what she'd say to me.
I suppose she was worried that you would get hospitalized as well.
Absolutely.
So with your near-death experience, that started, what was it? You were nearly 5 years old.
I was, just a couple months away from 5, and I was locked in an unplugged freezer in a garage, and the garage was separated from our house. And so no one could hear me and no one knew where I was.
But you were playing with some boys, weren't you? Do you feel that they deliberately trapped you in there? I mean, they're only small kids.
They absolutely did. They were mean boys. I don't know why I was playing with them, but then I was very codependent. I want everyone to love me. I was one of those children that wanted love and wanted to give love. And so it didn't matter whether they were mean boys or not. I was playing fort with them, and they asked me if I wanted to keep playing. I had to get up in the garage and get popsicles. They opened up the garage door. We weren't allowed to be in there. The garage was not, or the freezer was not plugged in. And I climbed inside because I was so young. I didn't think. I just thought I was going to, I don't know if I thought I was going to pretend to get popsicles because I was calling out flavors, or if I actually was trying to get them. I just wanted them to stay and play with me. And they closed the freezer door, and I thought I was in on a game. I thought we were playing and I was okay. And I thought it was weird, but certainly they weren't going to leave me in here. And the next thing I knew, I heard the thud of the garage door, and I knew I was in desperate trouble. I mean, I innately knew that something terrible was going to happen to me, that I was going to die. Even though I didn't know what die meant, I knew I was going to die. It was an inside feeling. It wasn't in my head. It was in my gut.
Wasn't there a thing then that you kind of started dying, I suppose, and then there were 3 lights that came?
Yes. I saw 3 beautiful lights that they were very bright. They said, "Stop screaming," because I was screaming at the top of my lungs. It was the scream of terror, that really high pitched sound. They said, "Stop screaming, Susie," and I didn't. I kept screaming. I didn't know what they were. And then a beautiful, amazingly beautiful bright light came towards me and said, "Susie, stop screaming. We're going to get your mommy." And I kind of felt like that feeling of "but first," but I didn't hear that. But I felt like they were but firsting me. And then I felt myself leaving my body, but I didn't look back, and I didn't feel popped out of my body. I didn't look back. And it's interesting, when I work with the children, none of them tell me they look back and see their bodies. I think it would frighten us. We're little and we don't understand. And to see our bodies, we wouldn't understand even more. So I recalled that feeling of leaving my body, but it was so brief that I didn't even take that in completely. And then I was at the bottom of a stairway. It was old and cracked and broken pieces almost, but just, I call it a Greco-Roman room today, but of course I didn't understand that then. And I remember looking up these stairs, and there was this round room, and it had pillars, and the pillars were broken and cracked and old. And at the very top of this room was an open ceiling, but there was a circle. So there must have been a cement circle, and then it was open and sitting on top of the pillars. And I remember at the bottom of the stairs, I was thinking, I knew there was something in the middle of that room. I thought it was a circle, and I wanted to get to it. And the next thing I knew, I was up the stairs. I mean, I felt like Jell-O, like I was Jell-O-y, and I couldn't walk up the stairs. And then I was there, and I was at the top, and I was on the edge of this giant well, what I called the well. And again, later in life, Raymond said to me, that was probably your tunnel. Because I said, how come I didn't see a tunnel? Everyone else sees a tunnel. I didn't see a tunnel. And he said, Susan, did you ever think that might be your tunnel? And that was life-changing for me. That was another aha moment of, what? Like, is this possible? And it made sense to me. And then I remember seeing movement in this beautiful well. It was words. And I wasn't a reader very well. I mean, at almost 5, I guess I could read some, but I wasn't like an avid reader. And I just remember knowing what those words were. And it was like one consciousness. Now, I didn't understand that then. So what I'm going to explain to you is what I understand as an adult woman. But at the time I didn't understand, but it was like one consciousness, one like DNA moving, twisting and turning together. And they were words. And I was hearing things like, God, my mother has cancer. Please don't let her die. And I'm turning 16 and please make my mom or my dad get me a new car. And just really different types of things, prayers that seemed silly and prayers or desires that seemed so important. And they were all mixing as one in this dark, vast, infinite well.
Is it that the room of heart's desires?
Yes. I asked them where I was, these angelic beings that were to the left of me. And they said, you're in the room of heart's desires. Now, when I wrote the book, I didn't know how to describe where each place I was. So I called it rooms. And they called it rooms for me, but it was a place. Each individual place was another place, another dimensional energy or energetic place. It wasn't really a room, but I didn't know how to describe it any other way.
And did you see other people in there? I think you said they were kind of like you in a way. They had that jelly kind of body, and then there was somebody assisting them.
Yes, I saw a person walking. I saw it later on in life, so I want to clarify that when my father died. So I hesitate, but I feel like it must have been someone I knew. But I had never known anyone who had died that I was close to or knew. I had an aunt who passed, but I didn't know her. I remember seeing this man and he was like jello and he was walking funny and someone was helping him. And I said, why are you walking that way? And he said, he wasn't used to his ethereal body. And I had no idea what he meant. If he had said jello-y body, I would have known. But he said ethereal, and I just looked at him. And then he smiled at me, and he was so happy, and he just kept moving. And he was moving towards what I call the yellow brick road. But there was beautiful colors in this room, like nothing I'd ever seen in this place. And there were, I call them crystals, but I don't know if they were. But now being an adult, I think they were. The walls of this room, of this Greco-Roman room, was shining like mirrors or crystals or something. And I remember seeing things floating above me that were clear, see-through, like three-dimensional or hologramic, graphic, like going. It's so hard to describe with human words.
Yeah.
I'm trying really hard. But like a hologram, but they weren't solid, but they were clear. And I don't know what they were.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But DC politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
And part of this thing of memory and remembering your near-death experience, do you find that all the children you work with who've had near-death experiences, or the people when they get older, they can remember them absolutely every tiny bit of it, even though many years pass?
Absolutely. It is so impactful. And as I was saying, it's like the Wizard of Oz. If you think about being a child and watching the Wizard of Oz, you could probably tell me what the Tin Man had on his head, that there were little people dancing, that there were ruby slippers and how they shined and sparkled, and that there was a house that fell on a witch and what color the witch was. And you could describe what the lion wanted to get. You don't forget something that impactful. And it's so impactful that you remember it in detail. And I think we're meant to. I can't imagine us having an experience like this that we weren't meant to if we were going to remember. So I know there's been children who have had NDEs that see spirits that don't remember what happened on their NDE, but they come back seeing spirits and they talk to, I work with them, and they are afraid because they don't remember the beauty of the NDE. So there are people that aren't supposed to remember, but if you are meant to remember, it will be extremely impactful and you remember every detail.
And you say they're not meant to remember, because there's this thing, isn't there, where you might get 100 people who've had a cardiac arrest and they were resuscitated, but only 10-15% of them will say they had a near-death experience. Do you think that perhaps all of them did, but that 85%, they're not meant to remember?
Yes. And also just want to say that maybe one of them was resuscitated in 2 seconds and another one was resuscitated in 10 minutes. So I was in that freezer anywhere between 20 minutes and 2 hours. I know it's somewhere in between. So I was there very long, where some other child might be, which children were in freezers, getting locked in freezers in my day often, and a lot of them were dying. But some of them were found instantly. Their mothers were there. They saw the door close. They 5 minutes into it were brought out of it, but felt they had, a near-death experience is an experience where you believe you are dying or going to die, but there's different extensions of that. So a child who believes they're going to die will have an experience of some sort, but they won't have a memory of the afterlife because they haven't completely crossed. They haven't completely died. But the near or the closeness of death creates an experience regardless.
Yeah, I've heard that some people, it's not that they're physically dead, but they still have a near-death experience.
Yes, hence near death. You're believe you're going to die so deeply in your soul that you have an experience.
So what happened next in your near-death experience after you saw that well full of words?
I saw this road. Now, I had seen The Wizard of Oz. It hadn't been that long since I had seen it, so I likened it to the yellow brick road. Those were the words I could find as a child to utilize. But what it was this beautiful golden path, and it was paved with pavers. And I saw pyramids at the beginning of this path. And I was watching what I would call humans going over to the pyramid and pulling from the bottom of it and grabbing pavers The pyramid was created with pavers. And I think of Jenga now, the game Jenga, and you know how when you pull from the bottom of it, it rocks and it becomes unbalanced.
Yeah.
I think that was their life journey. And I think I innately knew something about that, but I don't know what. I just recall that feeling of knowing something about this life journey was the pyramids. And I watched them pave this path, and it was crooked and really messed up, really out of sync. It wasn't a path. It was really bad. And I watched these people drop to their knees and say, for the love of God, please help me. Nothing's happening. Nothing's working. Everything I do is going wrong. And I felt a sense of almost sadness, but yet awe. So I understood that something was going to happen, what I was watching. And I watched these beautiful angelic beings. I don't know if they were angels. I call them angels, but they were angelic beings. And they came in and they started removing the pavers, and these humans disappeared. They were gone. And so I knew, today, looking back, I knew it was metaphorical for me. But at the time, they were just gone. And they put the pavers back to the bottom of the pyramid and rebalanced it. And they went to the top of the pyramid, and I watched them pull the pavers off, and they would recreate themselves. And I happen to think now that might have been, a recreation of our journey. We can change our minds. We can do it different. We can build off of what we learn. Maybe it has to do with reincarnation also. But I watched them take these pavers off, and I'd watch the pyramid recreate in totality. And then they started paving the path with the pavers they would take. And I asked them, and it was perfect. The path was perfect. And I asked them, what are you doing? And I've never shared this, but I remember the path not being flat. I remember it having little bumps or hills, not bumps because it was perfect, but little tiny rolling hills here and there. And I asked them, what are you doing? And they said, we are the pavers. You are not. All you have to do is walk it. Now, I know they put these questions in my head because I was I think they did. Maybe I was smart enough to ask it. But I asked them, when they said that about all you have to do is walk it, I said, how do you know if you're walking it right? And they said they bless and block everything. And to make no mistake, you can get through a block battered and bruised at best, or you can shift. And I think what they meant was, if you get battered and bruised, that doesn't mean you're going to achieve what you're trying to achieve because you're not on the right path. So you will learn the lessons and they will not be easy. Or you can shift. And if you see another wall or another block, shift again. And so on until you see us paving your path. They said, Susie, you think, and humans think they know what's best for them. And they pointed to what I thought was my head. And they put their hands on what I would call the heart space. And they said, we know what's best for you. What you try to control will control you. And what you run from will chase you. All you have to do is walk the path. I did not understand a thing they meant. I spent my whole life trying to control my life. But when I got older, I understood completely that whatever you try to control controls you because you can't stop thinking about it. It has total control. And what you run from will come in front of you again because it's a lesson to be learned. And so it will chase you. Have you ever noticed in your life journey, whenever you try to avoid something, it comes in front of you again because you're not meant to avoid it. You're meant to learn from it. And that's what they meant.
They kind of sounded like parents. Almost like this is how you would talk to your own 5-year-old, as you got to get these things done. And the 5-year-old were like, I want to play with my toys. I don't want to have to learn to read. But it's almost like, well, that's almost for a 5-year-old, learning to read might be a a pain, that I don't want to have to do that. But the parents are like those kind of guides that you talk to. It's almost like, we have to put this in front of you because it's good for you, because you will learn.
Mm-hmm. When people say that every single thing we do here is planned, that makes no sense to what they told me. And what you just said is very profound to what I believe. I believe that we make plans and we have contracts, which was another room I was in, or place. But it looks kind of like this, we have 4 doors in front of us and we have a goal, which is our contract. And to get to that goal, we have choices and free will. And we might open door 1 and walk in and go, "Ooh, this doesn't feel good. This isn't working for me." And we may step out of that door very quickly, or we may stay in it for years and years. Hopefully, at some point, we step out of that door that isn't working for us and we open door 2 and we see what that looks like. And we open door 3, depending upon where we decide to seat in our learning process. And so free will is very involved in our journey here. Otherwise, we'd be robotic or we wouldn't need to be here. The next place I saw was called the Room of Knowledge, where I learned this. And I saw families, one particular family, which is very interesting because someone on a podcast asked me, "Do you think it was you speaking and your family?" And I thought, wow, that's profound. Maybe it was. But I saw this little person and this family talking to these angelic people, these guides, and there weren't virtual things at the time, but I don't know how to describe, but there were these, what I would call virtual books or tablets or something coming in front of them. And I can see them in my mind's eye, but I don't know how to describe them with words. And these people were saying, "I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And my soul wants to resonate in the understanding of this," and so on and so forth. And these beings were saying to them, "Oh, no, honey, that's way, way too much to go through. But I want to understand it. I know I can do it. This isn't my first go round. I can do it. I know I can do it." And I was seeing this interchange going on. And I heard them say to them, "Well, you do have free will." And they were gone. And I said, "Where did they go?" And they said they went to the new incarnation. I had no clue what they meant. I didn't even slightly understand. But later on in life, someone said to me, when I came back, someone said to me, "Do you believe in reincarnation, Susan?" And I went, "Oh my God, there's that word." What? And I knew what they meant. But I asked the beings, "Where am I?" And they said, "You're in the room of knowledge." Now, I know that the earth plane calls it the Akashic records, but for a child my age that I was, I understood knowledge. And so the room of knowledge is what they called it. And that's what I call it till this day. And people were making their life plans. And in doing so, they try to discourage too much hardship because, we know that pain and beauty are equal in value, joy and pain. And in fact, pain teaches us the most because we want out of it. We want to be away from it. We want it to go away. And so it is our greatest teacher of change and growth. And we're here to grow and expand our souls. So unfortunately, pain's involved in that. It has to be. And when we're in joy, we're warm and cozy. We don't want to move. And they explained all that to me. And I didn't know if I liked the fact that pain, but when they explained to me that pain was not physical, it was, not necessarily physical, that it was growth, that it was change, I thought, well, okay. I don't think I really totally understood. I just was like, well, okay. And then the next thing I remember was being in a place called what I called the Room of Companions. And it was our animals, all creatures, beautiful, big and small. And all, every size, every kind, it was beautiful. Everything I was able to see and understood. I didn't see anything I didn't understand. I do want to say that I think that would have frightened me in some way. So I knew what a bear was. I knew what a wolf was. I knew those things. And so I saw the room of companions, and I was sitting in this field, and there were the most beautiful flowers I'd ever seen in my life. They were, I'll call them daisies and dandelions, but they were so beyond that, so beyond that. And there were beautiful colors everywhere, and colors you would never see on this planet. And let me just say, the love that you feel there is beyond anything you could ever feel here. I was completely and totally enveloped in a blanket of love the whole time. But this miraculous thing happened to me. And there was this, it's very emotional. There was this beautiful mountain, and I wanted to get up the mountain because there was this amazing, beautiful being on this mountain. And it had light all the way around it, 360 degrees of this beautiful love. The light was love. It wasn't light. Excuse me.
Well, that's okay.
I wanted to get up this mountain so bad. I wanted to feel that feeling. And I think I've spent my whole life trying to feel that feeling again, because what happened was this beam of pure, it goes so beyond the word love, pure, complete, total love was coming towards me, and it enveloped me, and I felt like everything, and I felt like nothing, and I felt perfect, safe. Safe didn't even come up in my mind because it was everything safe, everything perfect, everything unconditional. Sorry. And I had this feeling of being more than just a human, more than just a little girl, more than I was everything. And part of everything, one consciousness, everything. I was part of the animals I could see. I could feel them. Everything was pulsating. The blades of grass, I was part of it. And it was pulsating, this beautiful, amazing feeling of life. This isn't life here. That's life. And excuse me. And then the next thing I felt was this angelic being float out of this, what I would call a cobblestone cottage, but I don't know if it was cobblestone. And it looked like crystals to me, but it had shape. And so I called it the cottage. And she was coming towards me, and she was floating. And all I could think of was this light beam. I wanted to float like this light beam. And I kept thinking, I want to float. I hope I get to float. I'm sure I was. I just didn't know it. And she said, it's time to go. And I said, okay. I mean, I didn't know what that meant. And then I was next to this beautiful river of this crystal clear, clean, beautiful water. Like, it wasn't just water. It was everything. It was love. And they told me a little bit about what my journey was going to be like, and that it wasn't going to be easy. And I didn't really understand. I was pretty little. No more than I understood when they were talking about pain. You know, I didn't really understand it totally. And I had already had things happen to me. And so, but I still didn't get it. And the next thing I knew, they were telling me it was time to go through the water. And I thought to cleanse. And I thought they meant they were going to clean me up because I had been sitting in a field and I was going back to my mommy and they wanted to give me a bath. I didn't understand that what they were telling me is that we are born through water and that water is significant. And when I looked at these angels, the words and the music were coming out. This particular angel was singing and talking at the same time. And I understood later on that that's why music is so powerful to us. That's why music heals us. It takes us to every level of emotion because it comes from them. And all of this, I had seen my mother, by the way, while I was there, and I was telling her I'm in the freezer. But she was hearing it from some other space and time. And she wasn't listening because she was medicated, as I explained earlier. And she finally listened. She said she heard it for the third time and she listened and she ran outside. And she said the garage door was closed. And I don't remember, my mother is not here to tell me what, the exact details, but I recall her saying that she thought, Susie can't open this. She's not in there. And then something compelled her to open the garage door and go in. There were no garage door openers and garages were extremely heavy. They weren't aluminum. And she opened up the garage door and she went in and she opened up the freezer and I was facing inward. And she started to scream. She spun me around. She said I was ashen with blue fingertips. There were no cell phones. She dropped me to run to get help. I cracked open my chin and took a breath.
Hello, Simon here. I conduct past life regression therapy sessions over Zoom, and these sessions can be very insightful and healing. If you go to my website, pastliveshypnosis.co.uk, you can book a free 20-minute consultation where we can discuss what it is you would like to achieve. You'll find the link to my website in the show notes. When she heard this kind of voice, you say 3 times, did she think that perhaps it's something spiritual? Was it that she heard somebody say, your baby's in the freezer?
Well, she thought at first that she was imagining it, that she just got scared. You know how sometimes you think something and it's not true? And then she thought it was her fear because she wasn't tapped into her intuition like she normally was because of the medication they had her on. But she said by the 3rd time she recognized that this was something coming through her from another place, another space and time. And it was a mother's intuitive hit, her intuition, and the voice was coming from somewhere else. And that's when she ran. And it was quite a distance for a little girl. She said she heard the screaming in the beginning. And we had cats on our land and she thought it was a cat mating. And they have a very, very high-pitched sound when they mate. And she thought that's what the sound was. And that is the sound of terror in a child. It's that high-pitched scream. But she didn't connect the dots.
Did you feel that you had no choice about coming back? That angel said to you, okay, it's now time to come back. It's not like you were given a choice.
I wasn't given a choice. I think maybe when she was telling me my life is not going to be easy, maybe I could have said no. I think in my head, I wasn't sure I wanted that, but I wanted my mommy. And she said, you're going to see your mommy. And that was enough for me. So I don't believe I had a choice. There's a lot of children who don't, by the way.
And so was there any part of you that felt, I don't know, like more soulful and less of a little girl, that you had almost an adult perspective at the same time as having the child's perspective?
Yes. Absolutely. What a great question. I've never been asked that. And the answer is yes.
It's almost like it's your higher self or your soul or something is the other thing.
I think probably it was my higher self. My soul had resonated in that energy and understood. And being back, I know probably on that side when I was there, my higher self was working with me. I absolutely know it was, because I wouldn't know to ask those questions and to just observe. I was a little girl. I wanted to run around, but I didn't. I paid attention. So I'm sure that was my highest self helping me. And when I came back, I know that I had more of a grown perspective. I saw things so differently. And I would play with them during the day. My family called it the creepy room. My brothers and sister called it the creepy room because I would play with them during the day. I'd play the Beatles and we'd rock out and, and then I'd recognize they weren't there and I'd get scared and they would back away. But at nighttime, I was scared. I thought they were the boogeyman. I didn't understand. So that part of my adult perspective or grown perspective was not there. I didn't go, oh, there's spirits in my room and I'm safe and they're from the afterlife. I literally thought they were there to hurt me, but they never did. They never did anything mean. They were just there and I felt them and I would hear them mumbling. I didn't hear their words clearly at the time. I would hear mumbling. So it was like a lot of mumbling going on. I felt like I was living in two worlds looking back because I could hear the mumbling of the afterlife and I could hear the words of my sister, who was on the planet. So it was a very interesting way to live. When I was playing with friends, I could see their grandmothers or their mothers or whoever passed away in their life wanting to play with us. And I would mention it, even though my mother told me there's nothing there, don't talk about it. I would still mention it. And one time they beat me up, which is little tiny fists, and I wasn't hurt, but it was very shocking to me to be treated that way. And I didn't know that they didn't see what I saw. It was my normal. I was a little girl when it happened. So it wasn't like I know who I would have been without it. It was normal to me.
So is there a thing there then that it was almost like your bedroom or this creepy room was jam-packed full of people and even outside the house?
Both. I mean, they weren't jam-packed outside the house, but I could always feel them with me. I felt protected and I knew things. For instance, I had an incident where someone tried to kidnap me when I was a little girl. And I heard, run, Susie, run as fast as you can. It was a white truck and it was following me and there were two men in it. And I knew to run. I knew. And they guided me where to go. I couldn't go to my home because they were at the bottom of our hill. They came around the corner. I went through the field and they came around the corner and were waiting and I knew where to run. I was told where to go. So I was hearing them. I just thought it was my mind. It was part of me. It wasn't outside of me. It was an extension of me possibly, but it wasn't outside of me. It was part of me. The whole gift I had was part of who I was. And I think when people would say to me, that's the devil talking to you, I would be horrified because it was part of me. And, a lot of people around us were Catholic. Began my first beginnings of life. I was raised Catholic. My parents actually walked away from the church because of part of that, because they had this gift. My mother did, my brother, my sister, and me. I had it very big. And my mom was opposed to what she was learning because it was part of us.
And you also say in the book that you were shown angels from the spirit world because angels made sense to you because of your Catholic upbringing?
Yes. I was 5.5 when we or maybe 6 when we left the Catholic Church. So it was right after it happened to me. And my mother made the decision. And not that she needed to, but she didn't know any other way to deal with what was happening and the things that we were being told. So I really believe that at that point, I understood, the angelic realm and what was being said to me.
And was there a moment you felt quite alone with this thing with all these spirits, and you ran into your sister's room and got into bed with her, and then you found out that she could see them as well?
Well, we were in the same room. So this is very interesting. My children see spirits, but they are not from my biological makeup. My children are all adopted, and both of them have seen spirits. So when you are with someone who is continuously seeing them, remember, they're always there. They just vibrate a little bit higher or a lot higher than we do, but they are vibrating by us and around us. They're not gone. They're not in some place that's far, far away. And so what happens is that they become more and more prominent, and they're there so much that the souls of everyone have the ability to see them. But because my children lived with someone who could see them, and I lived with someone who could see them, it made them more prominent for me and for them. Now, my children didn't see them the way I did, but they definitely had experiences.
And so as you got older, did you learn to kind of control it and maybe shut down something so you didn't see them? Or do you think it just kind of naturally decreased a bit so you weren't so overwhelmed?
It increased. And I had a sleeping disorder. It got more and more. And I ended up going and seeing James Van Praagh, and walked up to me and in a group, and he said, "You've had a near-death experience and you have dead people all around you." And I looked at him, and I didn't talk about it. Remember that I was told not to, so I never told people what happened to me. And I looked at him and I was hesitant. I thought he was going to call me something bad or say something bad to me. And finally he said, "Just speak to me. Tell me. I can see it. I know it." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You need to use this gift, and you will. You will use this beautiful gift you have. Spirits are all over you." And that experience is what opened up the gates so widely. And I was blown away. And then I went and saw Lisa Williams, and she said the same thing to me without any knowledge. She said, "They're all over you, and you've had a near-death experience." They knew. And the fact that someone knew by looking at me when I didn't talk about it and share it was so profound to me that it allowed me, it actually opened my soul to where I was supposed to go with it, what I was supposed to do with it.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But DC politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
So when the spirits were coming to you, we sort of talked about how you may be a beacon in some way. Did they come to you because they wanted you to pass messages on for them? And they were all kind of lining up for their turn to have a message passed on? because you kind of said you could hear mumbling, but you couldn't hear exactly what they're saying. But did it become a lot more clear and you could understand them?
Yes. So I learned to understand them. So what they would do is they'd wake me up in the middle of the night. Wake up, I just died. And my family thinks I died by suicide, but I didn't. And you need to tell them. And my name is so-and-so. And I would hear, I'm so-and-so, sister's brother's best friend, and you're going to find out that I died. Someone's going to tell you. And you need to tell them this. I would write it down. And then I would get the call. Maybe 2 days later or the next day, did you hear about so-and-so's brother, sister's best friend? And I'd go, I actually did. I became a grief and addiction therapist. That's what I did for a living. And I just knew things. And I didn't try to be a medium. And in fact, when my grandmother passed, my Nana, she came to me. I was an older teenager and I was married and I was laying next to my husband and I couldn't sleep. And this entity came in front of me in a rocking chair, believe it or not. And she was rocking and she was telling me her story. And I said, go away, go away, go away, like I always did. And she started to go away. And I said, Nana, all of a sudden I knew her energy. So that's how I learned when it's our loved one visiting us, it's familiarity. We feel the familiarity. That's how I know the difference between a guide and a loved one. Excuse me. And after my Nana had left, I woke up my husband and said, I can go to sleep now. And he looked at me like I was nuts. And he said, okay, go to sleep. Because why would I wake someone up to tell them I can go to sleep? But the next day I had read in the newspaper, there wasn't internet at the time. And I had read in the newspaper that there was UCLA Medical Center was doing a study on ESP, extrasensory perception. And so I called them and I got probably an intake person and I told them my story. And he said, oh, you sound like you're what we call a medium. And I said, what's that? And he said, those are people who speak to the dead. And I freaked. I hung up the phone and I never spoke a word of it. I never told anyone after that. I was so freaked out. So not only was I hiding it, I got married. I didn't tell my husband. I wasn't to talk about it. I just lived in these experiences by myself and I would tell my mom and I would talk to my sister because my sister was seeing things. And my brother, I always talked to my brother, but I never spoke outside of that. And then when I started doing the therapeutic work, of course, I started knowing things like, oh, you have your PTSD comes from trying to revive your grandmother and you couldn't when she had a stroke when you were little. And they'd say, I didn't tell you that. And I would look at them in shock and I would literally backtrack. I was very inauthentic because I would lie. Because I would say, oh, it must have been someone else. It must have been when they'd say, well, that happened, but I didn't tell you. And I was so afraid that they were going to lock me up or take my license. And then they tell a friend and that person would tell a friend. And before I knew it, people were wanting to come to me for that. And I would see a few here and there. Or when they'd come to me for grief therapy, I'd tell them things that I knew. And it just grew from there. I stopped working to raise my children and I did it on the side and I did hospice work and I would do it there all the time because hospice was so open to it that I could tell the loved ones about what their loved ones were experiencing and who was with them. And I could talk to the people who were crossing about who they were seeing and I could have shared death experiences with them, which Dr. Moody has just wrote a book on shared death experiences. I was having them when I was working hospice as a young woman. And that's just when you experience them leaving their bodies and what's happening to them and you see what they're seeing. So hospice was my saving grace.
We've been talking about your book. It's called Infinite Life, Infinite Lessons. Wisdom from the Spirit World on Living, Dying, and the In-Between. And people can get that from Amazon, can't they?
Yes, they can get it anywhere where books are sold. Hay House is the publisher. And it is such a healing book. I recommend it profoundly, and I don't do that easily. It is so healing. It teaches you how to connect with your loved ones. It tells you where your loved ones are. It shares my experience. It's memoir and help, self-help. It talks about fear versus intuition and how to tell the difference. The love of the soul, what your life path is, what your soul path is. I mean, it goes into deep detail about everything I could think of, and it has exercises and integration moments at the end to help you grow in the ability to understand that the spirits are and always will be around you.
Could you give us the address of your website as well?
It's susangrau.com. That's susangrau.com. And I'm actually doing a book signing soon at the Americana in January in California, in Glendale. And I hope people come and show up and let me meet them. I love to meet the people who read my book. I love to hear what they feel about it. And I have so many positive, wonderful comments about how it's changed their life and the way that they view death and the spirit world and their world here, because they're there. It talks about the signs. And so it's just, it's a really powerful book. It truly is.
Yeah, I really enjoyed reading it. And I'll put the links in the show notes as well.
Thank you. And they can find out more about me and follow me on Susan Grau Official on all platforms, which, I do a lot of free things. I have a subscriber site that's coming up that will be starting January 11th. And it will I'll be coming on once a week and doing readings and sharing. I'll be teaching. It's called Infinite Soul Sanctuary. And it's going to be amazing. I'm really excited about it because it's going to teach people and help people and get to know me, and I'll get to know them. And there'll be places and rooms in it that will be like grief spaces where people that are in grief can go to and talk to other people in grief and all different things. It's just filled with impactful experiences.
Well, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the wonderful questions. I have never done a podcast like this where I get asked so many questions that are so outside of the box of just the book, and I really appreciate you.
Oh, great. Thanks a lot. This week I was talking to Susan Grau about her book, Infinite Life, Infinite Lessons, Wisdom from the Spirit World on Living, Dying, and the In-Between. And a great way to support the podcast is to join Patreon. When you subscribe for $6 a month, you get exclusive access to an extended episode every week. For $3 a month, you get access to an extended episode every month. And you can now sign up for a 7-day free trial. The Patreon episodes are ad-free and are released 2 days before the free versions. You can become a patron by going to patreon.com/ourparanormalafterlife or click on the button on my homepage at pastliveshypnosis.co.uk. The links are in the show notes. And please check out my other podcast. It's called the Alien UFO Podcast, and I release new episodes every Monday. And if you enjoy this podcast, please leave a review and be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or via your favourite podcast app to make sure that you don't miss out on any episodes. And thanks for listening.